When I don't harden off seedlings the right way, I pay for it all season. There was one year I didn't get the chance to harden off a round of tomatoes the right way. I put them right out into the garden, and I could have sworn for the rest of the season the plants were smaller, I got less fruit. I just felt like I hadn't done it the right way, and I felt like I dealt with it all season. But I thought that's got to be just my mind playing tricks on me until I actually researched for this episode. And after I researched for this episode, I came across a research study that proves yes, hardening off your plants the right way gives you benefits not just when you originally transplant them, which is what we're all told, right? You transplant or you harden them off for several days, then you transplant them and they'll get over their transplant shock faster. Well, there's also benefits the rest of the season for that. And I came across a research article that said, yes, plants are taller, leaves are bigger, and there's more fruit that's larger when you transplant or you harden off successfully. So now that you know for sure, and hold on just a second, I want to show you, see these snapdragons? I actually left this tray of snapdragons outside accidentally. It was accidentally at first, and then I said, okay, well, let's see what this experiment is, because I woke up in the middle of the night and thought, oh no, I've accidentally left these out. I don't think I can, it's not going to make any difference. Now, what happened? Well, you can see here that they're ruined. Leaving them out just for one night messed them all up. Some of them are older, the ones that made it okay in this picture, but you can tell that transplanting properly is the key to success. And what I want for you in this garden where you are growing the food that your family eats, you're doing it inexpensively. I don't want you to baby seedlings. In some cases, you baby those seedlings for months or weeks for sure. And you're babying them for weeks on end. And during that crucial part of the process between growing in the greenhouse and putting them out or under grow lights and then putting them out in your garden, that's a crucial step. And today I want to give you my simplified method for it. It's a way for you to think about the process more than an example of step by step. So there is a step-by-step process, but more than that, I want to give you exactly how to think about this process so that you can adapt it for anything. Today's day 19 of our 30-day gardening challenge, and I'm so glad you're here with me. So what is hardening off? Well, it's the day-by-day process of slowly acclimatizing your plants to the outdoors. Chances are, if you've been growing from seed indoors under grow lights, your plants might not be, your stems aren't thick enough to handle wind. The leaves don't have as much of a thick outer coating to handle the sun. And so for about a week to 10 days, you need to slowly increase the amount of sun, wind, and changes in temperature so that your plants can acclimatize to it and be able to effectively grow out in your garden. It's going to help your yields. In some cases, your yields are 25% higher when you harden off effectively. It definitely pays for you to get this right. If you skip this process, your plants will likely wilt. They could be shocked from the sun, get sun scalded, or even die. This process can set them back weeks of growing, even if they don't die. And as we stated before, there's proven scientific research that shows that hardening off is worth your time and money. It makes better plants that give you a bigger harvest. Let's talk briefly about what's actually happening during this hardening off process. Understanding hardening off will help you, and it'll help you understand why we can't rush the process. Indoor grown seedlings have very thin cuticles and thin cell walls. That waxy coating on the leaves that help prevent water loss, that's the cuticle. When exposed to direct sunlight, these tender plants will quickly lose water. They will wilt, and they lose that water faster than their roots can replace it. And so this is going to lead to them being wilted, sun scalded, and in many cases, it takes weeks for them to recover. Wind stress is another big factor for plants that have not been exposed to wind during growing in the greenhouse. Indoor grown seedlings have thin cell walls and a minimal cuticle layer. Now, the cuticle is that waxy coating on the leaves that protect it or keep the moisture inside the plant. And so if your plants don't have that waxy coating, as soon as you put them out into the sun, they are going to lose a ton of water. They're going to lose it faster than they can suck it up from the roots, and your plants are going to wilt, and they may not ever recover from that. If they're left out all day long, you could kill them if they're left out in direct sun all day. During the hardening off process, we find that there are 3 major changes that occur. Now, your plants start to increase that production of that waxy cuticle layer. The cell walls will thicken and become more rigid in response generally to increased wind, and the plants will be able to adjust their water regulation systems. Generally speaking, outdoors is less humid than the inside environment they used to grow in, and so you are going to find that the plants need to adjust the amount of water that they let go of from their leaves so that they can keep enough in the plant. So it takes a little while for them to get used to this. So these changes don't happen overnight. It's a gradual process of a few days. And that's why I recommend that you give them at least 7 days to harden off. If you can give them a little bit longer than that, that's really good as well. It's probably better. But if you have at least 7 days, 7 days is a good benchmark to go by for these plants. And I find the ones that really, really need this special care the most are things like tomatoes, peppers, and eggplant. Those are the ones that are the most sensitive to being given a nice long runway when it comes to hardening off. So I have a 10-day schedule that you can amend to fit your needs. And I'm just kind of referring back to it over here. Day 1 is your first exposure. So this is when your babies are first exposed to the outside. So I want you to put some thought into days 1, 2, and 3. Here's some practical tips for you. If you are not with your plants all day, these first 3 days are going to be the days that you're going to have to put some thought into. Now, days 4, 5, 6, 7, they will have been outside longer. And so you can start to leave them during a whole work shift if you need to. But the first 3 days, you're going to be putting them out in short blocks of time. And if you're not home with them to pull them in and out, it might be difficult for you to achieve this. Not impossible, but difficult. And it will require some workarounds. So day 1, you're going to give your babies 2 hours of exposure outside. No direct sunlight this first day. And so because there's no direct sunlight this first day, you will put your plants somewhere that is a sheltered space. So you can see me here. I'm pulling mine out for the first day. I've got them here in the shade. This is going to remain shady that entire time. So if your temperatures in the morning are warm enough, significantly above freezing, you can do this then. But if you're doing this in the spring, you probably will want to do this toward the end of the day, right? If that's the only time you have, if that's the 2-hour block that you have, you're going to take those plants out, put them in a shady location, get started on your dinner, making dinner, doing homework, whatever it is that you're doing, and then set that timer. Timer goes off after 2 hours, and you're going to bring those plants in. You're going to put them back into wherever they were, right? So that's 2 hours, day 1. Then day 2, we're going to increase that time outside to 4 hours. And one of those hours is going to be direct sun. Now, this day 2 and day 3 are really the 2 days that you'll have to really have a plan for. If you work away from home or you can't be with them during this time, what I suggest you do is think about how the sun travels along your back porch or wherever you're hardening off. Think about how the sun travels through that space and put your seedlings in a spot so that they get 1 hour of sun, but then the sun has moved into a shady spot, or to make it shady for your plants for those remaining hours. Okay, so if you can do this when you get home from work, right as soon as you get home from work, that's great. You can leave them out for 4 hours, put them back in. It's okay if you are doing days 2 and 3 in the springtime, and let's say your 4 hours, 6 hours kind of bleeds into the nighttime. That's okay. You don't have to have 4 hours of sunlight away from, while you're not at work, 6 hours of sun or daylight while you're not at work. That's going to be hard to achieve. Now, if you can make days 2 and 3 on the weekend when you're home, or those 2 days are when you're with your plants, regardless of whether it's a weekend, that would be great. If you could choose 2 consecutive days where you are with your plants, I would make that day 2 and day 3 of this process, because just, common sense speaking, nuts and bolts, we're really working through this process rather than this just being some idea. This is something that I want you to be able to do. So day 1 is something you can manage. Like, let's say day 1 is Friday, and you're managing it. You got home from work, you pulled them out for 2 hours in the shade, brought them back in, you're good to go. Day 2 is for 4 hours. One of those hours needs to be sun. So if it's a Saturday and you're home from work, bingo, you've got that. You're just setting your timer on your phone or your whatever you use for your timer app. And then you're going to say, okay, 4 hours, day 2, with one of those being sun. Day 3 is going to be 6 hours of exposure. It's not just sun that you're exposing your plants to. It is the wind, and it's the loss of moisture without being able to water them. It is the sun, it's the wind, it's temperature. So you're going to find on day 3, hopefully, maybe that's a Sunday for you if you've been able to time it out, or that second day of 2 that you're home with your plants. You're going to put those out, and up to 4 of those hours or 3 of those hours. Let me look back at my process and see exactly how I say. Okay, I say 2 hours of direct sun on day 3. Now you're going to put them outside for 6 hours. Part of those hours can be dark. The only requirement is that it's not freezing or below. You don't want them to be freezing. Okay, so that's the caveat there. That's what you want to make sure you're doing. Now, day 4, you are going to transition into, you're going to try to put them out at midday if you can. If not, it's fine. But they're going to get 8 hours of exposure to the elements. And half of that time, of that 8 hours, should be in direct sun. So again, think about mapping your back porch. Think about where the sun is. It starts off strong and then it goes into the shade. Or actually, ideally, it starts off in the shade and then in a couple of hours, it transition to sun. So either way, you want to make sure that if your plants are outside for 8 hours while you're at work, you're able to kind of manage that exposure. Don't freak out if it's like, oh, I'm supposed to have 4 hours of sunlight and they got 3, or I needed 4 and they got 5. As long as they're not freezing, and as long as you're watering them regularly when you bring them back in to their indoor resting spot, then they're going to be okay. So this day 4 is the first time that they're probably being exposed to nighttime. And so that kind of gives them the feeling of the transition into the cooler temperatures of night. And there are hormones that are released from your plants when they are transitioning from day to night. And so you do want them to experience that, just not on night 1 like I did with those snapdragons. So day 5, we're extending our exposure. We're getting them for 10 to 12 hours. You are probably, you're going to bring them in before bedtime. You're going to put them out 10 to 12 hours before that. You don't want them to have the harsh midday sun if at all possible, but you are kind of, giving them full exposure to breezes. You're not really protecting them unless it's from that full midday sun. Like, day 5, they're really rocking. They're strong. They've been exposed to some things. They're feeling their oats. They are definitely on their way to being hardened off. And honestly, if all you could give them was 5 very meticulously planned days, then you're better than like 95 to 99% of the folks out there. So days 6 and 7, we're almost there. You're going to leave your plants out from morning until late evening. You want 14 to 16 hours. They are experiencing at this point a full day. Like they get to see when the sun's coming up, the whole thing, and the sun goes down. They are kicking like fried chicken, full sun exposure, normal wind. The only thing you're going to, like if you have a hailstorm in the forecast or like a heavy thunderstorm, don't expose them to that. Like this is not it's not a test for the babies. If they fail the test, then you fail the test. So we want to go a little bit easy on them. So if we've got any hailstorms in the forecast or any like super, harsh winds, bring them in from that. But otherwise, they're experiencing life on the outside. So then your final hardening, days 8 to 10, if you can handle this, I think you need to leave them out for a couple of days, 24 hours, see how it goes, see how they look. And then you're off to the races. But again, if you only had 7 great days that are, stepped up each day in exposure, then man, you are on your way. Right. And so these things that I want you to remember there are a few keys to success here. The first one is always make sure they are watered before they go outside for their time on the outside. And then I want you to try to check them during their time out in the sun. If you have like a camera, if you have a security camera, you want to put your plants near that so you can check on them during the day, that'd be great. If they're wilting severely, yank them back inside, right? You don't, like, again, like I said, their failure is your failure. So you want to expose them little by little so that they can make adjustments, but you don't want to kill them. So if we're not sitting here saying, oh, well, I'm supposed to give them 2 hours of sunlight on day 2 or day 3, but it hasn't quite been that. So I'm going to let them sit out there and keep wilting. No, that's not a win for you. So you're going to check them during the outside time. Be extra cautious with your tomatoes, peppers, eggplant, things like that. Those are the plants that are really benefiting from this because they're super tender inside. Your kales, I have found that kales, brassicas, cabbages, they're a bit more hardy. The plants themselves are hardier. The stems are thicker. The stems are thicker. The stems are thicker. And so sometimes I only give mine 3 or 4 days to harden off. Like sometimes I'll put them out for a couple hours. Then the next day I'll put them out for 5 or 6. Then the next day I'll leave them out for 8 to 10. And then they're good to go. Those are my brassicas, things like kale, cabbages, Brussels sprouts, because they just have a thicker leaf and a thicker stem to begin with. But you do that if you feel like it, right? That's your call. And so I just keep track of that in my calendar. You can keep track of it in your calendar app, whatever kind of calendar app you have. So that is my simple method. I want to really I hope I gave you some workarounds for real life so that this works for everybody, even people who are not with their babies all day. Before I go, I want to answer a few common questions about hardening off. These are questions that I get a lot. If you get your seedlings from a greenhouse store or garden center, do you need to harden them off? Generally speaking, the answer is no. That process has already been done for you. Can I use a cold frame or an unheated greenhouse? You can for some of your cold crops, I guess. And for the overnight portions of hardening off, you can, but watch out. Don't leave them inside something like that all day because that does defeat the purpose and your temperatures will get so high, your plants will be scorched and they'll be super dead. Okay. So be very careful about that. So what happens if you have to interrupt the process? What happens if you get to day 4 and then you have to go out of town and you put your plants inside your growing area and you have to interrupt this process? That happens. It's fine. Everything is going to be okay, but you will need to start back over again with the process as though it had never started. So you don't get credit for time served in this process. Now, these are some of my pro tips. These are the things that I use to be successful in this, and they can help you too. So one of the things you'll want to do is to use technology to your advantage. Like I said, set your phone alarms to take them out and bring them in so you don't forget them. Number 2 is to really think out a spot on your porch wherever you plan to harden off. And you want a spot that has some morning sun, that transitions to afternoon shade, that's a little bit protected from wind and is easy to water. So that is going to be a spot. Think about where that could be for you before you start your process. It's going to make it a lot more successful for you. Then you're going to want to use a weather app to track the weather during this hardening off process. And so you can sort of plan around the weather that's going to come through. And if you're hardening off a ton of plants, you can use a wagon, a cart, anything that you can use to kind of roll them from place to place to make it easier for you, because it does get to be quite the process of pulling everything out, bringing it back in. So make sure you make it as easy for yourself as you can. And then that means you will actually do it. I know hardening off is not the most glamorous part of gardening, but I promise you this 7 to 10 days of your life is going to be one of the most key critical components of your success. I hope I've given you the exact process you were looking for. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments below. And now you know exactly how to harden off and why you should harden off. Have a happy day gardening. I know you could have been anywhere and you chose to spend your time with me, and I really appreciate it. Bye for now.